My name is Claire Maddox. I'm 36 years old, and I live in North Carolina, where people smile wide, wave from porches, and judge you to hell and back behind a glass of sweet tea. 4 years ago, I made the worst and most illuminating mistake of my life. I married Thomas Bernard. He was 40, charming, classically handsome in that white-collar divorced dad kind of way. I met him at a continuing legal education seminar in Charlotte. He was giving a panel on nonprofit funding strategies. I thought he was impressive, intentional. I remember the way he smiled at me like I was the only person in that Hyatt conference room who existed. I didn't realize back then that he just had a gift for focusing on women in the same way he probably focused on ordering lunch, brief, transactional, and a little performative. He had a daughter, Aubrey, 14 at the time, from his first marriage to a woman named Sandra who, and I say this without hyperbole, has the emotional range of a coffee table and the empathy of a toll booth operator. But I was in love. And love, as they say, makes you stupid. I moved into Thomas's house 6 months after we got married. It was a tasteful 2-story colonial in a cul-de-sac where everyone had matching shutters and HOA meetings turned into low-level wars. He told me the house was ours now. I should have looked harder at that sentence structure. Aubrey barely acknowledged me. She'd walk into the kitchen, look right through me, and go, "Dad, are we out of oat milk?" while I stood there holding the damn oat milk. I used to laugh it off. Thought it was teen angst or general hormonal indifference. Thomas would shrug. "She just misses her mom. Don't take it personally." I tried. God, I tried. I bought her books she liked. I offered to help with homework. I even got tickets to a Billie Eilish concert that she told me was already lame because everyone liked her now. She threw them away. In front of me, Thomas said, "She just has a hard shell. She'll come around." Spoiler, she did not come around. His family wasn't any better. His mother, a polished, pearls and criticism kind of woman, called me sweet, but career-focused the first time we met. Which is Southern mom code for barren and uppity. His sister once asked me if I'd consider quitting work now that I finally had a man who could provide. Thomas would laugh it off, squeeze my hand under the table. I'd smile, sip my wine, and pretend I didn't feel like the plus one to my own life. Still, I held on. I thought maybe, just maybe, this was just the hard part before it got better. Like a long trial before the closing argument. I mean, I'm a paralegal. I've seen worse. Divorce files filled with restraining orders and mugshots. This was just awkward. Until the miscarriage. And that changed everything. But I'll get there. I promise. You need to know how it all started, because only then will you understand how good the silence tasted at the end. And why I don't regret a single, calculated move. If you've never been quietly erased in your own home, let me explain what it feels like. It's not screaming. It's not slammed doors or bruised wrists or broken plates. It's silence. It's the way your voice starts sounding like background noise. The way people look through you instead of at you. And the worst part? It happens so slowly that by the time you realize you're being erased, you've already disappeared. After the wedding, things got colder. We went to St. Augustine for our honeymoon, 2 nights, beachside inn, expensive dinner. I pretended not to notice Thomas charged to my card, and when we got back, it was like I walked into a different house. A museum exhibit labeled family, with a sign under the glass, "Please do not touch." Aubrey didn't acknowledge the marriage. She never called me stepmom, not that I wanted that. I wasn't delusional. But she didn't call me anything. She'd walk in the door from school and breeze right past me like I was the ficus by the stairs. If I asked about her day, she'd give a shrug, earbuds already in. But it wasn't just indifference. It was contempt, painted in sugar. I bake when I'm anxious, cinnamon coffee cake, banana bread, old family recipes. One Saturday morning, I made these lemon scones I was particularly proud of. Aubrey walked into the kitchen, took one look, and went, "Oh, trying to fatten me up so Dad doesn't like me anymore." Thomas chuckled. "Aubrey," he said, like he was mildly scolding a golden retriever for peeing on the rug. Then he looked at me, grinned, and said, "She's got that wit from her mom." And I laughed. That's the part that still gets me. I laughed. Because when you're a woman in a house where you're unwanted, you start performing. You think maybe if you're funnier, kinder, more chill, maybe then you'll earn your place. You never do. But you bleed yourself trying. I told Thomas it bothered me. He put down his phone just long enough to say, "She's a teenager, Claire. You're being sensitive. You knew this wouldn't be easy." Then he added, "You're not her mother," like it was a reminder. Like I'd tried to steal the title. That sentence stuck in my throat for days. It played again and again when we went to his mother's birthday dinner and they didn't save me a seat at the table. When his sister posted a family photo online and cropped me out. When Aubrey left a card for Thomas on Father's Day that read, "Thank you for being the only real parent I've ever had." I didn't even get a hey, but I still held on. Until the miscarriage. That was the line. The invisible line I didn't know I'd crossed until the world on the other side burned. And let me tell you something about that fire. I walked through it alone. And they laughed while I did. But I remember. Every face. Every word. Next time, they'd remember me. I found out I was pregnant on a Thursday morning in late October. I remember because it was still dark outside when I sat on the edge of the bathtub, staring at that stupid little plastic stick like it had just asked me a question I couldn't answer. 2 pink lines. No doubt. I sat there for a long time. My first thought was finally. Not what if or am I ready. Just finally. I'd always wanted to be a mother, but life kept rerouting that dream like a GPS, trying to avoid traffic. I had a career. A husband. A home. It wasn't perfect. God no, but I thought maybe this baby would be the bridge. The thing that softened the edges between me and Aubrey. Between me and Thomas's past. So I waited until dinner that night to tell him. I made his favorite ribeye, medium rare, and loaded mashed potatoes, and I tucked the pregnancy test in a little jewelry box and set it next to his wine glass like it was a surprise party favor. He opened it, blinked, looked at me. "Seriously?" I smiled. "Seriously." He stared at it, and instead of smiling, he said, "Wow. That's fast. Not that's amazing, not I'm so happy. Just fast." Like I'd failed to consult his calendar before scheduling the rest of our lives. I told Aubrey the next day. She looked up from her phone and said, "So I guess this means you're gonna get even weirder?" That was it. No one said congratulations. No one hugged me. Not his mother, not his sister, not even Thomas, after the initial shock wore off. It was like I'd announced I was getting a new coat. Interesting, but not worth fussing over. I was 8 weeks when the bleeding started. 9 when the ultrasound tech wouldn't meet my eyes. I remember lying back on that cold table, hands folded over my stomach like I was trying to hold something in. She didn't have to say anything. I knew. Thomas didn't come to the appointment. "Work thing," he said. "Just let me know how it goes." I texted him. No heartbeat. He didn't respond for 5 hours. When he did, it was, "I'm so sorry, babe. Do you need anything?" Yeah, I needed a husband. A partner. A person. Instead, I got takeout left on the counter and a kiss on the forehead that felt like it belonged to someone he pitied. His mom called 2 days later, not to check on me, but to ask if I could still make the family cookout that weekend. I said I wasn't up for it. Her voice turned sharp. "Well, we all have hard days, Claire. But we show up for family." Aubrey told her friends at school I was faking it for attention. I only found out because her friend's mom, who's in my yoga class, pulled me aside and said, I just wanted to say I believe you. Believe me. Like I was a liar. Like the grief in my bones needed a jury. Thomas? He sat on the couch that night, sipping scotch and watching Top Gun for the third time that week. When I asked him if we could talk, he said, "Claire, I really don't want to go over this again. I'm exhausted." He said again, as if I was harping, as if a dead baby was just a scheduling conflict he'd rather not revisit. That night, something in me shifted. Quietly. Permanently. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't cry. I just sat on the bathroom floor, holding the positive test, and realized I was the only one in that house who ever wanted that child. And then I realized something else. I wasn't going to live like this. I wasn't going to die like this. I wasn't going to be the footnote in my own damn life. And the next time they forgot I was there, they'd regret it. It happened a week after the miscarriage. I hadn't really spoken to Thomas since. Not beyond the mechanical stuff, bills, laundry. Do you want coffee? That sort of married couple autopilot that makes strangers think you're fine. We weren't fighting. Not exactly. But the silence had mass. It filled the air like smoke. Thick. Toxic. Choking. That night, I woke up around 1:30 a.m. I'd been having that dream again, the one where I'm in a hospital, but no one will look at me. Not the nurses, not the doctor, not even Thomas. They just move around me like I'm furniture. I woke up soaked in sweat, throat tight. I went downstairs to get a glass of water. That's when I heard his voice. At first, I thought he was watching TV. But it wasn't the glow of the living room. It was coming from the office. Door cracked. Light on. I crept closer, barefoot on the hardwood, holding my breath. He was on the phone. I couldn't hear the other person, but his voice was clear. Calm. Familiar. No, I haven't told her. What's the point now? I thought it'd be different. I thought marrying her would fix things. Pause. I don't know. I thought I'd feel more. She was just stable. After you, I needed that. But God, it's like living with a client. Everything's scheduled, polite, clinical. Another pause. He laughed. Laughed. I miss us. The sound that escaped my throat was involuntary. Like a dying animal. A breath with teeth in it. He didn't hear me. I backed away from the door like it was radioactive. Climbed the stairs like I was trying not to trip a mine. Lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, counting the slow rotations. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't fling open the office door and demand an explanation like women do in bad TV dramas. I just lay there and listened to my husband tell his ex-wife that I was a mistake. That I was boring. That I was a band-aid he regretted applying. And in that hour of fluorescent moonlight and betrayal, something inside me cooled. I know what you're thinking. That's the moment I left, right? Wrong. That's the moment I woke up. I stopped being the woman who tried to win a popularity contest in her own house. I stopped trying to bake my way into their affections. I stopped asking for a seat at a table that had been set without me from day one. And I started planning. You see, I'm not just a sad little wife from the suburbs. I'm a paralegal. I've read enough affidavits and estate transfers to know where the bodies are buried, even when the corpse is a mortgage or a misfiled tax form. I've seen how people destroy each other in courtrooms with the flick of a pen. And Thomas? Thomas left every weapon I'd ever need lying around like candy. He just never expected I'd be the one to pick them up. But I would. I'd bide my time. I'd smile at dinner. I'd make scones. I'd answer politely when Aubrey rolled her eyes. And one day, they'd turn around and realize I'd not only stopped playing their game. I'd changed the rules. They say you can't burn a house down while you're living in it. They've clearly never met someone like me. I didn't leave after that night. I didn't scream, accuse, or even mention the call. I kissed Thomas on the cheek the next morning and asked if he wanted French toast. He said, "Sure, babe," and scrolled through his phone while I cooked. He had no idea he'd declared war. And I wasn't just going to win, I was going to rewrite the surrender terms. It started small. Passwords. I already knew his Gmail, his work calendar, but I started keeping a file. A literal one. Locked, encrypted, and buried in a cloud drive under a fake real estate client's name. I made it look like a continuing ed folder, something dry and technical. Because if Thomas had one weakness, besides lack of character, it was that he never respected what I did for a living. He thought being a paralegal meant I alphabetized files and fetched lunch for attorneys. In reality, I'd been working in real estate and trust law for almost a decade. I'd sat in on more depositions than he had conference calls. I knew how to read between lines people didn't even know they were writing. So I started collecting. First came the bank accounts. We had a joint checking account. He thought I used it for groceries and bills. But what he didn't know was that I'd quietly opened a separate savings account in my name only, linked to an email he didn't know existed. Every time I paid the bills, I skimmed just a little. Grocery store cashback, small transfers marked utilities, birthday money for his niece who didn't exist. Nothing big. Just enough that over 4 months I had nearly $9,000 saved. Then came the credit card. Not ours. His. He had a second one. I found the bill in a pile of junk mail when I was doing the budget. Different address on the account, P.O. Box in Raleigh. He was careful, but not careful enough. I called the issuer pretending to be him. You'd be amazed what a warm voice and a social security number can do in North Carolina. They read me the balance, then the last 5 transactions. 3 hotel charges. 1 spa. 1 boutique that sells silk lingerie and nothing else. I printed everything. Next, the nonprofit. He'd always bragged about his role on the board of Youth Forward, some feel-good community mentorship org for at-risk boys. Said it gave him purpose. I took a closer look. I pulled their 990 forms, cross-referenced the listed vendors. One of them? A consulting firm, registered under a name I recognized, Aubrey Bernard Consulting. Except Aubrey was 16. And the signature on the registration form looked a lot like Thomas's. I had enough experience to recognize what I was seeing, light laundering. He was moving funds from a tax-exempt organization into a shell company he created in his daughter's name. Sloppy. Risky. So very male. Each night, I filed things away like breadcrumbs. Quietly. Diligently. And I smiled while doing it. They thought I was slipping. Depressed. Dull. Receding into my little corner of grief like a polite Victorian ghost. Good. Let them think I was weak. Because when the time came to detonate their lives, I didn't want them to see it coming. I wanted them to wonder how the fire started. There's an art to revenge. People think it's about anger or getting even. It's not. It's about control. Taking it back, bit by bit, quietly, without blinking. While Thomas sat on the couch every night watching reruns of Shark Tank, I sat in our shared home office, catching up on work. Translation. I was gutting him from the inside out, one file, one account, one digital footprint at a time. First, I set up a private mailbox at a UPS store 30 minutes away. To him, I said it was for a legal client who didn't want documents mailed to her office. To the bored teenage clerk behind the counter, I was just another paper pusher with a fake smile and a need for discretion. I rerouted all my personal mail there, new bank statements, the LLC registration for a consulting firm I quietly created in my own name, and a prepaid debit card that I used to test purchases linked to Aubrey's fake business. And then I did something bold. I started paying the mortgage myself. See, when we refinanced the house last year, He was a little short on the paperwork. Claire, you know this stuff better than me. Can you handle it? I did. I handled everything. I filled out the forms, emailed the lender, got the documents notarized. And somewhere in the shuffle, after a few strategically placed sign here post-its, the updated deed came back, with only my name on the transfer on death clause. I never corrected it. North Carolina is what's called a tenancy by the entirety state when it comes to married couples. But not if one person's name is removed during refinancing. All it takes is one oversight, one missing signature, one uncorrected assumption, and the house reverts to individual ownership. And you better believe I had documentation to prove that oversight. I began paying the mortgage directly from my new savings account, tracking every payment with meticulous care. Because one day I knew there would be a question. Who owns this? And the answer would be me. In writing, with bank receipts, with paper trails he never saw coming. Meanwhile, Thomas got sloppier. He started leaving emails open on his laptop. One from a woman in Raleigh. Last night was amazing. You make me feel seen. I took screenshots. I didn't even flinch. Aubrey, meanwhile, was spiraling into her teenage delusions of royalty. She started referring to the guest room as my future walk-in closet. One night she laughed at my leftovers in the fridge and said, "God, you're so poor person energy." I smiled. "You'll miss that lasagna one day." She rolled her eyes. "Yeah, when DoorDash goes out of business." That night, I changed the Wi-Fi password. Just because. Every day, I practice the same lie. I'm fine. Everything's fine. But my fingers were building a case. One they'd never see until it was too late. Because this wasn't just about getting away from Thomas. This was about making sure he could never rebuild on the ashes. And honey, I was stacking the kindling. You can measure a man by what he assumes belongs to him. Thomas assumed the house was his. Because it always had been. He bought it before the divorce. He paid the down payment. His name was on the original deed. His family had helped paint the guest room. So, in his mind, even after we refinanced, meaning I did all the paperwork and he glanced at the signature line, it was still his. That assumption would cost him everything. Let me walk you through the mechanics. Refinancing, at least in North Carolina, can get tricky when it comes to ownership. Especially if you're not paying attention. If one party signs a quitclaim deed to remove their name for the purpose of refinancing, and they never re-record their ownership afterward, guess what? That home, that big, beautiful monument to suburban success, now legally belongs to the person who never quit the claim. Me. I made sure everything was filed properly. Online. Verified. I had copies of the county records in a private folder, time-stamped and certified. Thomas? He didn't even notice that when the bank sent the new mortgage packet, my name was listed as the primary on the payment plan. He was too busy forwarding flirty emails and pretending he was still relevant in the nonprofit world. One night, I brought up the idea of doing some renovations, maybe updating the kitchen, installing smart locks. He waved me off. Why would we waste money fixing this place up when we'll probably sell it next year anyway? I blinked. Oh, we're selling. Eventually, he said. After Aubrey graduates. Maybe move down toward Asheville. Something with land. It was the first I'd heard of it. The plan was always to stay here, at least, that was my plan. The one I was paying for, literally and metaphorically. But in his mind, I was just the live-in assistant with benefits, the placeholder. And placeholders are temporary. That was when I called in a favor from an old colleague, a real estate attorney I used to assist back in Raleigh. He helped me put the finishing touches on the trust. We filed a transfer on death deed with only my name, backed by 6 months of mortgage payments in my bank statements. It was legal. It was clean. It was irreversible. If I died, the house would go to a charitable trust. If he died, the house stayed mine. There were no documents linking him to the current title. Not a single scrap. But Thomas didn't know that. So when I started talking about my equity and my investment in the house, and he got that little condescending smile, I just smiled back. And when his mother mentioned, during brunch, while sipping her lukewarm mimosa, that she hoped I'd consider giving the family home to Aubrey someday, I dabbed my napkin and said, "Oh, I've already made arrangements for the property." She frowned. "What arrangements?" I smiled. "Let's just say it's accounted for." She didn't like that answer, which made it perfect. The best part? He still kissed me goodnight that evening. Still tucked himself into my bed in my house and mumbled, "Night, babe." He thought he was playing chess. But the board was mine. And every piece had already moved. You don't just leave someone like Thomas. You disappear from their life so thoroughly that when they finally turn to say your name, all they find is air and an echo. It had to be surgical. Clean. No slamming doors, no emotional grand finales. I wanted them confused, not warned. So I picked a Friday. Thomas was going to Raleigh for a networking retreat, which was funny, considering I had receipts showing he'd booked a suite at a boutique hotel under the name Marcus Graham. Very subtle. Real Bond villain energy. He'd be gone until Sunday night. Aubrey was spending the weekend with friends at a lake house, the kind with dads who run hedge funds and daughters named Madison or Chloe. Perfect. At 7 a.m., the movers arrived. Professional, discreet, prepaid in cash. I gave them a list of what to take: my clothes, my documents, the furniture I'd paid for, which turned out to be most of it, my great-grandmother's dishes, and anything else that had my fingerprints on it. Everything else? Let it rot. By 11 a.m., the house was gutted of me. Like I never existed. I left the wedding photos on the mantle. I wanted him to see what was missing. The next step was the digital purge. I wiped the shared laptop, deleted every document he might use to track me. I logged out of every smart device and changed the router login. Every password, every cloud account, every streaming service. Gone. His Spotify was now filled with Gregorian chanting. A little parting gift. I left no note. Just my wedding band in the silverware drawer, next to the soup spoons we never used. Then I drove 3 hours south to my sister's condo near Charleston. She knew nothing about what I'd been planning on purpose. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't want anyone trying to talk me out of it. That night, I slept in her guest room with the ocean humming outside the window. No snoring, no TV flickering. No passive-aggressive teen girl sighing from down the hall. Just peace. Wide, clean peace. And that's when I sent the files. It started with the IRS. Everything I had on the fake consulting company, the forged signatures, the donations redirected through Aubrey's name, the dates, the trail. Organized. Cross-referenced. It was, if I may say, a paralegal masterpiece. Next, I sent a copy to the Board of Youth Forward, the nonprofit Thomas chaired so proudly. I attached screenshots, receipts, even photos of the fake invoice forms he printed from our home office. I copied in 2 local reporters who covered financial ethics in the nonprofit sector. I gave them a tip under a pseudonym, the Bernard File. By midnight, my husband's little empire was smoldering. No one had heard from me. My phone was powered off. My social media scrubbed. Email, auto-reply on. This inbox is no longer monitored. The silence must have driven them mad. But it was intentional. See, rage is loud. But power? Power is quiet. And in that quiet, I took everything they thought was theirs. And reminded them it never was. It took exactly 5 days. 5 days from the time I hit send on the Bernard File to when the first headline appeared. Local nonprofit under investigation for financial misconduct, Chair resigns amidst allegations. I clicked the link from the cafe near my sister's place, sipping espresso like it was just another Tuesday morning. It was surreal, watching it unfold from a distance, like streaming a movie I'd written, except no one else knew I was the screenwriter. The article was concise, clinical. Youth Forward's board had launched an internal audit after concerns were raised. Thomas's name was plastered in bold, with the photo he always used for business, navy blazer, forced smile, a chin tilt meant to project leadership. I knew that blazer. I'd packed it for him once when he was headed to a gala. I folded it carefully. I imagined him reading that article in it now, sweating through the lining. But that was just the beginning. 2 days later, a second story dropped. This one came from the financial watchdog reporter I'd looped in. Charitable fraud allegations link Youth Forward to shell company registered to Chair's teenage daughter. That one was juicier. They'd pulled public records, Aubrey Bernard Consulting LLC, signed by a minor, no business license, and a paper trail that led straight back to Thomas's tax returns. The board issued a statement, deeply disturbed, cooperating fully, zero tolerance for impropriety. Aubrey deleted her Instagram account within hours. Sandra, his ex, the one who used to look at me like I was a houseplant she hadn't asked for, posted a cryptic Facebook status that said, "Some people deserve exactly what they get." No sympathy here. Petty? Maybe. But I allowed myself a long, slow laugh. My phone, of course, was off. But I still checked my burner email. 23 new messages from Thomas. Subject lines like, "Claire, please. You need to come home. This is serious. I don't know what you're doing, but you need to stop." Each more frantic than the last. There were voicemails, too, saved and forwarded from a friend who was still on the inside. Thomas's voice, shaking now, "Claire, for God's sake, this is ruining me. You're ruining me. Think about what you're doing." I was. Every day. With joy. The best part? The house. It took him a while to realize it. Maybe a week. Maybe 2. But eventually, he marched into the county clerk's office and tried to verify the title. What he found was my name. Only mine. The house wasn't in his name anymore. Hadn't been since the refinance. The mortgage? Paid exclusively by yours truly. He'd been living in a house he legally had no claim to. He sent one more email. No subject line. Just a single sentence. "You'll pay for this." I didn't reply. Because he was wrong. I already had. In silence. In erasure. In grief. In every empty seat, every ignored word, every time I folded myself smaller to make room for him and his broken, brittle legacy. This wasn't revenge. This was restitution. And it was only just beginning. It's been 8 months since I walked out of that house. 7 since I sold it. The real estate agent was shocked when I said I wanted it gone fast. Didn't even ask for top dollar. I just wanted it off my hands. Let someone else hang curtains in those windows. Let someone else sleep under that roof. I didn't need a monument to what I survived. I needed space for what came next. The profit? I used it to buy a small townhome in Wilmington. 2 bedrooms, one for guests or maybe an office. Hardwood floors. Exposed beams. The kind of place you can breathe in. I painted the walls myself. Sage green in the kitchen. Eggshell blue in the bedroom. No one told me not to. No one questioned my color choices or asked if I had a budget in mind. That first night, I slept on the floor with a glass of wine and a throw blanket. No mattress. No furniture. Just me, a bottle of Cabernet, and the knowledge that no one could walk through that door without my permission. Silence. Real silence. Not the kind that hums with unspoken anger or muted grief. The kind that feels like an exhale. I found out a few months later that Thomas had to move back in with his mother. Youth Forward folded completely after the audit uncovered over $80,000 in misappropriated funds. There were whispers of federal charges. I don't know what came of them. I don't care. Sandra, the ex-wife, blocked me on everything. Aubrey tried to follow me on Instagram under a fake account called wellness_queen_88. I didn't even bother blocking her. Let her watch. Let them all watch. Let them try to understand how the woman they dismissed, ignored, and walked over turned into a ghost that haunted their bank accounts, reputations, and titles. I never gave them a confrontation. No big speech. No kitchen table breakdown. No, you'll regret this. Because they were already regretting it. And I was busy living. I started freelance consulting, legal filing, and estate audits. I work remote now, by choice. I take Fridays off. I joined a paddle boarding group. I met a woman at a pottery class last week who laughed like thunder and looked at me like I wasn't made of paper. We're grabbing drinks this weekend. Sometimes I still think about that version of me, the one who stood in that house and asked, "Why doesn't anyone see me?" She was soft. But she wasn't weak. She was building a fuse the whole time. And now? Now I burn clean. The voicemail box from Thomas is still full. I haven't checked it. I won't. Because this is how my story ends. Not with revenge. But with silence. The kind that follows a final breath. The kind that lives in the pause after justice has been served. The kind that makes them wonder if I ever existed at all. Until they remember what it felt like when I left. And realize I was never coming back.